July 11th, 1804. Aaron Burr shoots Alexander Hamilton and is then drafted by the Minnesota Vikings. Welcome to The Revisionists. I'm Brian Flynn.
I'm Zach Powers.
I'm Kira MagCalen.
Our special guest for tonight's episode. Kira, tell us a little bit about yourself.
God, I can't answer that well. I'm a comedian. I run a monthly show at the Deer Pile called Two Truths and a Lie. It's every first Thursday.
What's the concept of the show?
It's pretty much the title.
Yeah.
Comics tell stories. Some of them aren't true.
And one of them specifically is not true.
Yeah, well, it's rounds. It's like a game. So some of the later ones are also not true.
Well, this is the first episode. If you haven't listened to our introduction, I just want to recap the idea of the show. We pick a random topic from history. One person is going to present the actual true story. Another person is going to present a crazy, made-up bullshit alternate history. And then we decide which version we like more. And that becomes our accepted history.
Yeah, and so much as we literally go back in time and change it to reflect
We literally do that.
You're gonna, Wikipedia change it? And,
No, we have an actual time machine, and we've decided to use it exclusively for this.
Oh.
So
That could backfire.
Also, if I knew how to edit Wikipedia at all, I would consider doing that.
Yeah.
So our topic that we chose for this episode, our first one, is Alexander the Great.
The G.
The ATG.
Yeah, the OG of
The OG of G's.
Macedon.
I mean...
Macedonian gangster.
Yeah, the MG. Alright, so, Kira, you were a fan of Alexander the Great when I mentioned that this was going to be the topic, correct?
Correct.
Alright, so you chose to present the true story.
Yeah.
Zach?
Well, and just to be clear on our functions throughout the show, Brian's going to be presenting the alternate history in this particular episode, and I will be acting as an old Southern judge.
Wait, why a Southern judge?
All the best judges are Southern, except the worst ones.
Yeah.
Some of the worst
That's
ones
the worst judges.
are Southern. But they're charismatic. Have you seen My Cousin Vinny? Great.
Wait,
feel like
are we talking real judges?
Fictionally, they're pretty great. Reality-based Southern judges have a poor track record.
Jesus Christ.
So, yes, I'm going to be playing the role of...
This podcast available in states North Carolina and up.
In the Union States.
The role of somebody who has
This is terrible.
My heart still burns for the Union cause.
I will pretend I have never heard of Alexander the Great. I know nothing but the hills on which I was born. And developed this improbable accent.
Wait, what?
I'm sure they're beautiful hills filled with lovely and enriched people.
Yeah.
What does it take to become a judge in the South? What sort of background?
You'd be surprised how little it takes. We said the shack I grew up was a law school, and Alabama was like, cool. So now I'm a judge. They gave me a gavel.
Do you know how many A's are in Alabama?
Ooh, at least 6.
At least 6.
Yeah.
Right,
so
depending on the conditions.
These guys
Good judge of words.
are
I
going
like
to talk to me
this.
like a child who has never heard of Alexander the Great. Doesn't know why he's so great. Did he get an EGOT, maybe? That could be it.
I don't even know what an EGOT is. I really...
It's a series of
It's a 30 roll.
You know what? It's Egypt, Greece, Ottoman Empire. Oh.
Different.
And
but,
the Vatican?
and a Tony Award.
Turkey.
Well, no, that's the
Ottoman
Ottoman
Empire, yeah.
I mean, it was like Germany and Turkey, though, right?
What?
It's a
What are you
twofer.
talking
It's a
about?
twofer.
I mean, yeah, the OT would just both be for Ottoman. We're capitalizing
Yes.
the whole beginning of the word.
Yeah, great.
But
go with that.
yeah. So, Mr. Great, Alexander, was born 356 BCE. The numbers go down for the people who... So, he dies in 323, doesn't Benjamin Button out of it. But, he was born to Olympia and Philip, one of whom has a cooler name than the other. His father, you know, Philip's pretty jazzy.
Yeah.
So King Philip was actually, there's a lot of his reputation of him being kind of the guy who established Macedonia, but it was pretty okay when he got there, but he made it better.
It was pretty okay when he got there.
You know,
It was fine.
It didn't require the gentrification. It was in the process of that level of gentrification. He just put up a few more.
Yeah, opened up a few artisanal pie shops in Macedonia.
I'm supposed to be giving the real history, and
Right.
I'm adding in some pie
was-
shops. Pita shops, I think, would be
As
more
though
accurate.
Macedonia was Chuck Berry and Philip was that new sound he's been looking for.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that. So Alexander was pretty precocious from a young age. He was tutored by Aristotle. He one of the more famous stories about him from his childhood was taming Bucephalus, which is a horse with a superhero's name.
Mm-hmm.
And
I was
supposedly
thinking STD.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the name of horse syphilis, actually. Yeah.
and he tamed it. That
Yeah.
horse is cured now.
Yeah, tamed was the ancient word for curing, I should say.
Yeah. That horse had a bucephalitic issue that was
Yeah, that's how Al Capone died.
Horse Al
syphilis.
Capone.
Yeah.
oh no. I think one of the reasons that we attach "great" to the name, you can talk to some historians that prefer that we don't use "great" anymore because it's very sexist, but that's for another time. Ominous laughing at that
we
for
should
it
say
is.
the cisgendered Alexander
This
the Great.
is
Alexander the, sorry.
yeah. Well, Alexander of Macedon is how he's typically referred
okay.
to now. Anyways, but he's sort of infamous for having
Alexander
never.
Mastodon, sorry.
Dude, you know how hard it was for me. I actually somewhere in here is a note that he wasn't a mastodon.
Remember.
He did have horns, though. We'll get to that in the future.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to the horns. Right now, we're still in childhood. He's tamed a horse.
So it is possible
very
he
impressive.
was some kind of hell demon brought forth to...
It's been suggested, but so anyways, he takes over as commander of the cavalry, the companion cavalry at 18, and assists his father in essentially strengthening the Greek hold, which is fun. He became the king at 20, so at 20 he was doing better than me.
Yeah.
He probably would have had his associates at least. So he became
Or
king
least
at 20
a
and
vocational school.
yeah, he clearly had a trade, which was conquering the world. He was
Yeah, he
really
liked to
good
work
at
with
that.
his hands.
Very much so. He's a man of the people, specifically the conquered people
Right.
that
The
he.
downtrodden Persians.
saying Noah Baumbach's Mumblecore movie about Alexander the Great at 20
Yeah.
years old. Maybe it would have been a little different.
Just
Screaming
a-
and screaming.
Yeah.
The screams of the conquered.
Actually, he was pretty well liked. He didn't have a lot of use for the people once he was conquered. He wasn't very into
People?
Yeah, he wasn't really a people person. He was an owning people person. But he'd actually conquered Persia at the age of 26. He had a vendetta against Darius. I believe Darius was also the third. They were at threes at this point in the BCEs.
Yeah, they only had 4 names that they named people at this point.
Yeah. And
Darius,
you could only go
Alexander.
up to 4.
Philip and Olympia. Actually,
Yeah.
there was one woman's name.
It was
Olympia.
extraordinarily confusing.
A lot of places and women, all the same. Made for a lot of good double entendres. They hadn't invented those yet, but they said them all the time.
They just had entendres.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anywho, so actually the thing about conquering Persia, one, he had really good strategies. His method for conquering Persia involved not actually infiltrating Asia, but going around Asia Minor and sort of conquering everything coastal and then working his way inward. He also employed engineers to help, repair and create equipment for his armies. So he had some good moves when he was trying to defeat Darius. He actually was not the one to kill Darius. That was a gentleman whose name I don't know if I have.
Such a gentleman he was.
I'm trying to figure out. I have his name written down somewhere. Not somewhere that I wrote.
Well, we know it's either Philip, Alexander,
Yeah.
or Darius.
Yeah, I think this gentleman's name began with a B, I want to say. I want to say Banus?
Philip. Crassus?
Philip? It could have been Bucephalus. Could have been named
Well, he
after
was
the
the-
horse. But that gentleman actually, he was one of the admirals, I believe, for Darius III, killed Darius III, which upset Alexander, who therefore set out to kill unnamed man who served a pretty important role in this history.
Stealing. Something
Yeah.
20-year-olds still get upset about today.
Yeah, he was upset about that. Let's see, some other cool notes. I guess the other big thing, the horns. We can go there now. That's
I've been wondering about the horns.
So, he's often depicted as having horns.
No, I've seen him depicted as having horns.
Well, you mentioned a lot of stuff was recorded after his death. So
Yeah, but monetarily
the fic
speaking,
could come
he
into play.
That's right, I did read about this.
he is very frequently depicted as having horns. There's a couple interesting things about this. One, this has to do with the legend of him walling off the hordes of Gog and Magog, who essentially they're like Mongols. They're nomads. They're warrior nomads. But if you go into some conspiracy theory shit, they're demons. And he was the one who walled them in. In the Quran, he's portrayed as having horns, supposedly because he's from Greece, if I understand right. There's also been, and I was trying to find some sources to back this up, and I unfortunately couldn't find the ones I was looking for, but there's been suggestions he had osteomas, and he just actually had bone spurs coming out of his head. Which has been suggested that it created some discomfort on his frontal lobes that actually happened to make him a great warlord. But his contributions...
Would make headbutts more effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how they fought wars at this point. It was
Primarily headbutts.
Yeah,
right?
it was headbutts and arm wrestling.
They were rams
Yes.
back then. All of them. Just sheep fighting.
Man,
Really
sheep.
accurate, my version.
Mindless.
Once
sheep.
they came up with punching, it was like, this is a game changer.
Yeah,
The
that
invention
was
of
his
punching.
contribution. I'm doing the real history, but that was his contribution, was punching.
Actually, that was invented by Jonathan Punch in 1902.
Wow.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is a long time to
Way
go.
after guns,
Yeah,
surprisingly.
It was originally called arm gunning.
I like... That's why they call it the gun show. I like... Sorry, I had
No,
to.
that's fine. I accept. I brought this on myself.
So we, created clubs before we had punching. I like that. That's how history. We achieved fire to get to punching. He had a lot of contributions. The library in Alexandria, one of the many Alexandrias, as he tended to name cities after himself, except for one that's named after that horse. There's a lot of Alexandrias and one Bucephalus. His contributions were ultimately... He was pretty kind to the people he conquered unless they did an uprising, in which case he would just murder everybody. So as long as you were fine with him on your money, he wasn't really that bad of a leader, and because he conquered so much of the world, he gave us common language and established trade routes that were still used after his empire wound up being dismantled. He's sort of attributed for the spread of Greek as a common language. And for his death, there's an interesting story that it was actually prophesized by Colonus, who is a Hindu prophet, I think Punjabi, I want to say his nationality was. He's 73.
I'm hoping that the prophecy was more than, I'll bet he dies at some point.
It's more
That's not much of a
it's actually
prophecy,
very
really.
poetic. Yeah, that's...
Because that's just people.
I'd be willing to make that prophecy about a lot of folks.
But the one
You are
that's
getting
not
into your
true
Southern
for
Judge
it.
character a little bit. I heard the slight tinge of an accent there.
Just a little more tinged on you. By the end of this, we're all
It's
going to be
rubbing off on
trying.
me.
By the end of this, we're all trying. Like,
Every single one of us talking in a thick southern drawl.
some better than others. This is going to be very racist against Southern people, and I apologize.
Now I'll say this Alexander here.
He,
Is that Five-Horn Leghorn?
He's southern. He's the avatar of the South.
Yes, he's Southern. He's also a cartoon. I want to say.
I mean, really, if we want to generalize about chickens that are also cartoon characters, a lot of them are from the South.
Chickens love the South.
Science fact.
Uh,
But you were saying about the prophecy of
colonists.
Alexander's death.
So Colonus was a Hindu prophet. He traveled with them for part of their adventures. The end of his reign, by the way, I'm not really doing this chronologically, but most of this is true, aside from, the notes about names being 4. Essentially, he wanted to conquer the world, but eventually his soldiers were just like, we're tired and we want to go home, so they mutinied, and that's why he stopped conquering people. That's really... He didn't lose, his men were tired. And, So on their way back, Colonus, who's 73, says essentially that he doesn't want to be disabled, and he's just like, he wants to die by self-immolation, which is a popular way for monks to go out. It's a style. But this happens...
I like the idea at some monk high school when they're just like, "Do you hear Chad self-immolated? He is so sexy." I was going to say hot, but I thought it was too much.
He's... So yeah, Alex says no, by the way. He doesn't like the idea of immolation. We're calling him Alex. I feel comfortable. I've read a lot about him.
It's like he's here
I think
with
he was
us.
a good guy, aside from the mass murdering of people. He was really into trying to kill Darius. That was the one he was like really trying. Other than that, it was all...
And he got kill blocked, man.
Yeah.
Sabassus or whatever.
We should look that up.
Baba Booey. He said Baba Booey while he killed Darius instead of Alexander.
I think I found it. Bessus.
Bessus.
Old Bessus.
The Southern Judge loves old Bessus.
Alex did not, though. He killed him pretty horrifically. Anyway, so on his funeral pyre, before he dies, Colonus says, "We shall meet again in Babylon." Just a little vague, but sort of attributed that he was referring to the fact that you'll die, go to Babylon. I don't know. That was a popular destination. Anyways, right after that, he came down with a fever and he died. It's generally accepted that he died of malaria. There's some theories that he was poisoned. They think his half-brother Ptolemy might have poisoned him. There's some things about some of his many lovers. One of them might have done it, but there's not really a lot of...
Bellicis. Did he get to... How close was he with that horse?
I mean, he named a city after it, which is...
Pretty close.
That's very close for man and horse relations.
I mean, he didn't name any cities after any of his wives, and or lovers, for that matter. So... it is, you know...
1 point to horses.
It's not
0
recorded.
points to people.
I mean, that's how he ended all his relationships with his lovers.
Just, I'm going with the horse.
Yeah, exactly. And
his body was lost. His wife killed some people. She had a son. He's dead. He didn't do
I would have
anything.
been surprised if he were still alive.
Your prophecy has come true. Another death. He died when I believe he was 13. He was killed off by one of the people that... Cassander was his name, because it was very feminine to me. Cassander. Cassander killed Alexander IV. And he had no other children. Stopped with him. He was 32. Died of a fever. He was a G.
ATG. Alright, so the alternate history of Alexander the Great, it starts out pretty much the same. He was born to King Philip of Macedonia, and, grew up being groomed for the throne. At a young age, he does encounter the horse Bucephalus. An interesting story, the horse was offered as a gift to his father, but his father saw the horse, going apeshit and saw that he couldn't be tamed. So he's like, oh, I'll give it to my son. But Alexander managed to tame him. I posit that Bucephalus allowed himself to be tamed because Bucephalus was mad with a lust for power.
Wow.
Yeah.
Different kind of lust.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's many different kinds of lust, as we'll oddly discuss later.
It's a theme.
So, yeah, Bucephalus and Alexander, they grow up together. Alexander becomes groomed to take the throne, and Bucephalus
is groomed by Alexander as a horse.
Yes,
that requires
Bucephalus is also groomed to keep him shiny and glossy. Alexander was kind of logy, didn't want to be a great warrior king, but Bucephalus was so mad for power that he gave Alexander the motivation he needed to finish his training and become the greatest warrior in the known world.
So I have to ask you, is this a Mr. Ed situation?
Yeah.
Is it psychic connection?
Well, no one knows for sure. The fossil record doesn't indicate
lost to time.
The truth, exactly. The sands of time. I mean, I imagine it was some sort of telepathic connection. This isn't fucking TV. It's not like a talking horse. That'd be fucking ridiculous.
The horse mad with power.
The horse was voiced by Eric Roberts.
Yes. A talking horse? 6 people will get that. But Bucephalus gives him the motivation to become the greatest warrior in the known world, which is 6 blocks, basically, at this point in history. But
I mean, I think you're going to want to revise your estimation of how large the world was.
Or how long a block
Well,
is.
at this point, they didn't know that much about the world.
Granted, there's like 6 roads, so we could argue that
they thought the world was
Silk
like
Road
carried
is
on
a block.
turtle's back. What?
It was
And
actually a
was.
succession of turtles.
Yes, it's succession.
Like a baton.
Yes.
Yeah, well, it was a small turtle. It was more of a pyramid scheme.
Oh, like
like a Urinal the
Turtle
Turtle.
situation.
Yeah.
So Alexander becomes king at age 20, and he leaves Macedonia. Yeah, he leaves Macedonia, which is a country made out of mashed potatoes. It's an exact replica of Macedonia. He leaves Macedonia and begins to conquer the Persian Empire, and he founded a bunch of new cities, all named Alexandria.
Oh, they were named that before.
No, he founded them and named them Alexandria.
Oh, he found it. He didn't find.
Multiples, each one in a row.
The way you phrased it sounded like conveniently.
Immediately. Yes. Oh, Alexandria. Well,
You must
What
be
do I
on the
mean?
right path. All
you
of
seem
these.
conquerable.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
every time he named a city, he completely forgot, because every time he found a new city, he was bonked on the head with a coconut, and it wiped his memory clean.
Don't ever say that to a girl named Alexandria. Don't ever.
That I'm gonna bonk you on the head with a coconut?
No, that she
I wouldn't
seems
say that-
conquerable.
Oh, okay. That seems I wouldn't say that to anyone, let alone depending on the name.
I don't know. I'd say that to like a small stack of paperwork. I guess it's not a person,
Small stack
but
of paper.
I can do
Small
this.
stack of sentient paperwork.
I mean, really, that's objectifying the paperwork to me. But,
I mean, maybe a sea cucumber.
Yeah,
They
right.
seem pretty conquerable species.
well, yeah, so of the species, they are the most conquerable, other than, like, spiders.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think they've got the market cornered on like screaming women.
Cucumbers?
No, spiders.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, what about mice? I think mice have a strong argument to make.
They do frighten the elephant population.
Yeah. There's apocryphal tales.
Right.
It's actually they mythbusted that it's a thing.
Really?
They don't like mice.
But they don't scream and get on a stool and run away.
Well, they trumpet and back up, which is
Oh, God, I do
surprised.
remember that.
yeah,
Yes.
I am legitimately surprised by that.
yeah.
Well,
I think
because
everyone
one
kind of
is
was.
many orders of magnitude bigger
Well,
than
it
the
seems
other.
like some fantasy cartoon Looney Tunes bullshit.
Yeah.
Exactly. And actually, if a gun backfires, you just get a bunch of soot in your face.
If you bend the barrel of a gun and point it back
Yes.
at your own face, turns
Nothing
out it doesn't
happens.
shoot you. I've tried this many times. It's my preferred
Wait, you tried
method.
shooting yourself with a bent gun?
It was my preferred method of suicide, and it's ineffective.
So, yeah, he begins conquering the I'm still kind of stuck on Macedonia in my head.
I was gonna say self-immolation more effective if you ever want to give it another go.
Self-immolation.
I'll look into it. I'll read the pamphlet.
When you're 73, you can apparently predict death as you
Oh, no.
die.
You can also just put it up on your suicide method review site. .tumblr.com.
Dark Thien says 2 thumbs up.
As he moves throughout Persia, he does fight with Darius, but Darius was actually controlled by a talking house cat. So, a lot of the rulers in the ancient world were influenced by psychic, power-mad animals.
Which were all the rage at the time.
Yes, all the rage.
This sounds like a Pokemon world where the monsters control the people and make them fight.
In Japan, yes, it is the Pokemon who...
Yeah, or
But it's just animals in Greece.
I always think kind of a Son of Sam situation.
I mean, Pokemon, Son of Sam, there's not much...
Pokemon was based on the Son of Sam. A lot
Yes.
of people know that.
Son of Sam was actually based on Pokemon. As he moves into Persia, he begins to adopt a lot of Persian customs. The most controversial of these, proskynesis, which is the practice of having your subjects bow down before you and kiss your feet, which Alexander loved because he was, like all Greeks, a huge foot fetishist. Bucephalus, the horse, who had guided him all this way, saw that he was like, hey man, this is not cool. It's a horse language, he doesn't actually say it again,
Right.
it's psychic.
It's psychic, yeah.
It's implied by
It's implied,
by
yes.
the look in his deep brown
I'm
eyes.
assuming Alexander's disrespecting him because, again, the horse doesn't have feet.
Again, horse hooves are not a turn-on.
No.
Have you-
Everyone knows that.
I mean, you could
They're
put
the
it...
least sexy part of a horse.
Right? I mean, you could put an
As opposed
actress's
to the
name
ears.
into- Well,
They're velvety.
Have you seen the way they kind of flicker?
let's
They
not,
seem-
let's not go further down this hole. Although if you do put an actress's name into Google, hooves does not come up as a possible image search.
Proof yet again.
That hooves are not sexy.
I bet ears would.
Yeah.
However,
Velvety flickering ears. Natalie Portman's velvety flickering ears is what I have up here
It seems
right
probable
now.
to me that there is a lot of My Little Pony porn.
There probably is.
Anyway, so we're talking about
Bucephalus telling Alexander that it's not cool to be worshipped, and Alexander, upset at being embarrassed by a horse in front of his dudes, makes Bucephalus do proskynesis before him. He does, and he totally sticks around, but their relationship was never the same after that. The last straw came when Alexander was trying to invade India and sort of get into that region. He was confronted with these armies that had elephant cavalry. And he kept remarking out loud about how cool elephants were and how much better they were than horses. Like, right where Bucephalus can fucking hear him.
it's insensitive.
Yeah, well, Alexander's kind of become drunk on power at this point.
That's what happens to the sensitive ones.
Their intense weakness to the smallest mammals.
Right.
But I feel
Or
like they still
Looney
had mice.
Right.
Like,
Didn't have Mythbusters for Looney Tunes back in ancient Greek days. That's one part of history that remains the same.
but no mice.
No, mice weren't invented yet.
I feel like if
Okay.
you hadn't seen Looney Tunes, you would never try it.
I feel like there was just like one mouse that just like one day was like dared by his mouse friends, like, you know what you should do? It's like you should go run up and just run up to the elephant. I don't know what the stupid dare would be.
Bucephalus has had the last of it, so he fakes his own death to get back at Alexander to sort of teach him a lesson. And Alexander is so distraught by this that he names a city after his horse. And Bucephalus, they never find his body. So he could still be out there. Alexander falls into drink and depression and foot worship. So you mentioned the conspiracy theory of Alexander being poisoned. And I found a whole list of different suspects. Antipater, who is the man he left in charge of Macedonia.
Which
When
would
he-
translate to no father, wouldn't it, if you know Greek?
I think so. Which I don't know how that would work.
Latin, Greek,
Or
I don't know.
Voldemort.
Yeah. Voldemort? Who is more Voldemort?
It's from French. The T is silent.
It's not, no,
It's actually well, the
It's
man.
it's not from French. It's an anagram of Tom Marvolo Riddle.
Voldemort means flight from death in France.
Oh, yeah.
French.
Whatever. Listen.
We'll save this for our Harry Potter cast.
Antipater, Iolus, his son, who was also his wine bearer, who had easy access to poison him. 3 of his generals, Socrates. None of these people actually poisoned him. They all did. Just in succession, they would go in, put a little poison in his cup, and they would hear the next person coming in and hide behind a curtain. In total, 39 different people poisoned Alexander.
So it's a
And
murder
all
on
hid-
the Orient Express
Yeah,
situation.
and they all hid underneath the curtain. And he didn't notice that his cup was overflowing with poison because he's too distracted by the 76 feet sticking out from underneath the curtain. 'Cause
And
again,
they're all just like hanging out there and they're not asking why the other dude's there. They're just like, I'm just gonna
no,
pretend.
they're playing it cool.
Oh, that's...
Have you never poisoned anyone?
Well, I've never hid behind a curtain afterwards.
I mean,
Then you haven't poisoned anyone.
if Polonius taught
I
us
mean-
anything, it's that when you stand behind a curtain, play it cool.
Don't get stabbed.
That seems more like a Macbeth thing. Something very Shakespearean. Just don't get stabbed. You go behind the curtain. Yeah,
I
it's
don't know
Julius
if that-
Caesar.
No, Julius Caesar was stabbed
In front of a curtain.
well, yeah. No, they're played, so they were all done in front of a curtain.
Which would mean at some point they were behind the curtain, and it's really important not to get stabbed when you're
Exactly.
behind and no one can see it
In
happening.
the early days of plays, actors were constantly getting stabbed.
It was very dangerous back then. It was seen a lot differently.
And that's the story of Alexander the Great, king of Macedonia, and his horse regent Bucephalus, who again might still be out there.
Ghost horse.
With power lust horse.
Ghost
Gross.
lust horse.
.org. So those are the 2 stories. Zach, you have a chance to weigh in.
Geez, 2 beautiful tales, both equal in majesty.
In fair Macedonia, where we lay our scene.
In fair Macedonia, land of mashed potatoes.
Okay. Which I would not be surprised if it were in an episode of Adventure Time. We're fresh out the gate, and I think it's fun. We should walk, not run. I think the first time I'm going to stick with original history. History 101, Alexander the Great. My vote goes towards...
I'm raising my hand because this is a podcast and you can't see it, but it's a very victorious gesture.
Yeah, it's mildly
one
victorious.
Of the most
Kira.
Impressive,
Hope you sore
possibly...
loser. Oh my gosh.
One of the
Thanks,
most
man.
impressive, possibly gay or bisexual men in history. I don't want to give his glory to some stupid horse that
That's
had
true.
syphilis.
Well, no, he was cured.
Yeah.
As we discovered. So if your horse
And
has
the real
syphilis, something.
tame it.
Tame that horse syphilis. Ugh. Gross. All right. Well, Kira, thank you for. I honestly would have voted for your story also.
Thanks. I'm not sure how accurate that was. I thought it was a little... I mean, the whole thing's revisionist.
I mean, basically, after a certain point, history just...
Oh, it's called the revisionist. I just got it.
Before we sign off, Kira, would you do the honors of reaching into the hat
Yes.
to draw the next topic?
I'm gonna pretend it's a deeper hat.
It's a regular
A topping hat.
It's a stovepipe. It's all the rage now.
It's Abraham Lincoln's actual hat.
Oh, it's Caligula.
Oh yeah.
All right.
There's nothing.
Don't
we can
sound
do
too
with
excited
Caligula.
about Caligula. It's weird.
Oh no,
It's like,
that's
ooh.
why I'm excited.
Whew, Caligula.
Ooh, Caligula.
Said a lot of women before terrible things happened.
The Caligula-themed erotic fanfic. Ooh, Caligula.
Right.
It's a Caligula-themed life, just like Alexander was an Alexandered. Really, that was just a conquer-themed. He's pretty one-note in his accomplishments. I don't think he played clarinet or anything.
Yeah. Headbutting.
You're not. Yeah, headbutting.
Taming things.
Taming.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's kind of well-rounded. Horse taming, conquering people.
Well, I mean, he used the horse to
Dog
conquer
whispering.
people. Dog whispering. Yes.
And you said he was getting out, he was kind of getting done with his whole conquering phase at the end of his life. Maybe he was getting into like...
The end of his 32-year-old life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's still pretty young. You get into like jazz.
I mean, he had a lot of sex. I guess that's kind of a hobby.
I mean,
that's a good hobby to have, isn't it?
if you're at the point where you're calling it a hobby, you are having a lot of sex.
Yeah.
Before we head out, by the time this goes up, we should have cover art designed by our friend Josh Hollis, and we want to give a big shout out on air to him.
Yeah, many thanks to Mr. Hollis.
If you want to suggest a topic or leave any comments, you can do that at revisionistpodcast.com. I guess that's it for our first episode. But Kira, thank you so much
Yeah, thank you for having
for
me.
being here. We'd love to have you back again
Totally.
Every single week.
every single
Cool.
week.
So-
This is
Yeah.
your new job.
Yep.
We're not
Alright.
paying.
We have
Most of
some
them
history
don't.
books in the back and a 4x3 room for you to sleep in.
For everyone here at The Revisionist, I'm Brian Flynn.
I'm Zach Powers.
I'm Kira MagCalen.
We'll see you next time.